This is 4200%. Build, scale, sell. The playbook for entrepreneurs who mean business. No fluff, no theory, just bold moves, real strategies, and the unfiltered truth from founders who built it, scaled it, and sold it. If you're ready to grow fast and exit strong, you're in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of 4200%. Build, scale, sell. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Jamail Larkins, CEO of Aviation Start and FAA ambassador
for Aviation Education.
Aviation Education. Jamail, welcome so much. Thanks for being on the show.
Anthony, thank you very much for having me today.
I'm excited to talk with you about all the great things you're doing. Before we even get to what you're working on now, walk me through your childhood. What was that like, and how did you get on the road to business?
So I was an average kid from Augusta, Georgia, that was probably a self-proclaimed nerd. I was really interested in space camp and all sorts of different things. But when I was 12 years old, I had a chance to take my very first flight through a program called the Young Eagles program. Got hooked on flying and decided that I wanted to make my career in my life aviation.
How old were you when you did that?
So the very first flight was 12. I got hooked on aviation, started taking flying lessons. By the time I was 13, actually, I was prepared to solo. Unfortunately, inside of the United States, you have to be 16 to be able to fly a powered airplane solo. So I got this bright idea at 13 that I should petition the Federal Aviation Administration and try to get an exemption to fly solo before my 16th birthday. I ended up flying with 6 different flight instructors, 2 designated flight examiners. All of them wrote letters to the FAA saying that I could safely handle an airplane in solo flight. FAA wrote me back a letter saying, that's great, but we still need more information. And during that time frame, I found out in Canada, you only have to be 14 to fly solo up there. So I went on another letter writing campaign, wrote over 100 different aviation companies, asking if they would sponsor my trip to go up to Canada. Over 91 of them told me no. And then I finally got my first yes and wrote a couple more, raised all the funds I needed to by 103, went up to Canada and became the youngest American pilot to fly a powered airplane solo at the age of 14.
There's so much great stuff that I feel like you didn't gloss over. You just mentioned as a matter of fact. I mean, let's talk about 91 no's.
Yeah, that was difficult. You know, the funny thing is, if I look back at it, if I would have starting up a company, if I would have gotten 91 no's today, I don't know if I would have had the willpower or determination to continue going through that process without having that experience as a young kid. Hearing the no's, not being afraid of failure, actually served me pretty well because it laid the foundation for hearing no's in the future for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean to give up. You continue to go after whatever your dream is.
What drove you? Why was it so important to you? I want to solo at 14, and I know Canada can. I'm going up there.
It wasn't even about the ultimate goal of soloing at 14 originally. What it started off with was every single hour I was going flying, a third of that cost was going to flight instructors. And I didn't have to pay for a flight instructor because I could actually physically handle the airplane in solo flight by myself. And I was just thinking, this is a really expensive babysitter that I do not want to pay for anymore. And it was interfering with an extra hour a month of being able to fly. So my goal was lowering the cost of flying for myself originally. And then after a couple of meetings, and having someone tell me, you're never going to make this happen, added a little bit of additional fuel to the fire to be able to prove them wrong.
Amazing. So you've got those yeses. You go in Canada. You did the solo, it sounds like.
Yes.
Did you get licensed in Canada?
So I got my student pilot's license at 14. You cannot get your private pilot's license in Canada until you turn 17, just like here in the United States. But they do allow you to actually fly an airplane solo at 14. So I did that, accomplished that, came back to the United States. I met with the FAA administrator. I met with the Secretary of Transportation at the time and went all the way that high for my petition request. Everybody was like, we love what you've done. Congratulations. But still, no. Unfortunately, there's petition requests actually happened shortly after the Jessica DeBroff accident. I'm not sure if you remember, it was a 7-year-old girl that was trying to set a record of becoming the youngest person to fly across the country. She had her flight instructor on board of the airplane. So technically, she wasn't flying the airplane by herself, but she was going to be the sole manipulator of the controls to win this record. She unfortunately died with her father and her flight instructor in that airplane accident. And Congress almost made a law that stated that no young person could even touch the controls of an airplane. So the FAA was really scared of doing anything, whether you could prove that you've done it in a different country safely and legally, they weren't going to touch it, which looking back, I understand that now. Government has to make laws for the masses and not the individuals. Unfortunately. But it was a good learning lesson, an amazing experience to be able to go up to Canada and solo at the age of 14. The process of having to develop relationships and work with potential sponsors, media training, everything along those lines, starting to get that under my belt at the age of 14.
That's such a great story and inspiring to listen to here. Take us now from there, and you're growing up to Aviation
So what
Start.
started after I came back to the United States, I eventually got that no. I knew I wasn't going to quit flying, but I had to figure out a way that, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to lower the cost of flying for myself, I had to be able to make enough money to be able to do it on my own. So I started up a small pilot supply company selling headsets, GPSs, pilot equipment online through a website, JamailLarkins.com originally. And I got a distributorship with Gulf Coast Avionics. I became one of the distributors for King Schools and Rod Machado's flight training products. And so just basically tried to hawk as much equipment, the local pilots as well as online, to anybody that I possibly could. And that worked out pretty well. By the time I turned 18, my senior year of high school, I purchased my very first airplane, Christian Eagle II, which is a high performance aerobatic biplane that I ended up flying in air shows across the country for 5 years as the youngest air show performer in the country. And getting the chance to fly aerobatics a couple hundred feet off the ground, going 210 miles per hour, inverted, pulling positive 6 Gs to pushing -5 is the most exhilarating experience that you could ever possibly imagine. So started up the company doing that. And then when I was in college, the company evolved into actual aircraft sales and leasing. I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I was an aviation business administration major there. And one of the cool things about going to an aviation university is the network that you develop. Primarily all of it's inside of the aviation industry. And one of the alumni from Embry-Riddle was a gentleman named Arnold Leonora. And he was involved in commercial aircraft sales and leasing. And through all the different business ventures I had been getting involved in by that time, a friend of mine from Augusta, Georgia, asked me about buying his very first jet. He owned a couple of car dealerships in Augusta. And I called up Arnold and said, hey, I have a friend. I don't know who to recommend him to go to, but because I'm in aviation, he asked me for my opinion. And Arnold said, instead of me having one of my guys do it, how about I walk you through the process and see if aircraft sales is something that you're interested in. And so I ended up coordinating and doing this deal. That original deal fell through, but Arnold liked what I did. And he called me up a couple months later and said, I have a Hawker 800 that I need to sell for or acquire for a client. Would you like to do the deal? So my very first aircraft sales transaction was on a Hawker 800 SP.
Oh, beautiful plane.
As soon as I got that check from that, I knew that aircraft sales was something that I wanted to be involved in. And then so I proposed to him, hey, how about we start up a joint venture? You primarily do commercial aircraft sales, so it's not going to impede on your actual current business, but you really don't have any real representation on the general aviation side. So I will handle that. I just need your expertise and guidance to be able to get this thing off the ground. And by the time I graduated Embry-Riddle, we had not only sold a bunch of turboprops and jets to people that I knew inside of my network, but I had also started up the leasing end of the business. And we had bought over 10 brand new Cirrus SR-20s that we were leasing to flight schools across the country, a couple additional Pipers by that time, and things were going pretty good. By the time I turned 25, that company had evolved and becoming a company that earned me a spot with Inc. magazine as their #1 entrepreneur under the age of 25 in the entire country.
Where do you go from there? Yeah.
So, it's been trials and tribulations as well. It hasn't been a completely smooth road. I guess a couple things to add on to there. While I was in college, the Federal Aviation Administration approached me. I had started traveling around. I guess I should also mention, in high school, I became the national spokesman for EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association's Young Eagles program. And so I started traveling around the country when I was in high school, going to local EAA chapters, air shows, and really trying to promote the aviation industry to young people all across the country and trying to show them that they could get involved inside of the industry, either as a hobby or possibly as a career. And from that work, the Federal Aviation Administration, I guess I caught their eye. And when I was 21, they asked me if I would serve as their very first ambassador for aviation and space education. And so my senior year of college, I started a national tour called the Dream Launch Tour, where we've been traveling all across the country, typically 20 to 30 cities every single year, going into high schools and middle schools across the country. To date, we've gone to over 1,000 different schools across the country. We've spoken to more than 60,000 students about their career opportunities. And one of the cool things I love about the tour, and the reason why I keep on doing it, is that we've seen results from it. We've seen on average about a 70% increase to aviation-oriented universities after the Dream Launch Tour goes and visits a particular school. So we know that we're awakening the opportunity of aviation and students all across the country with it. This year, we're starting another tour. We start the tour on August 18th in Orlando, and we'll be going to another 20 cities all across the country before the end of December. So I'm excited to go out there. But one of the coolest parts about it this year is the Aviation Start. The number one question that I receive when I'm traveling across the country and talking to students, if they have an interest in it, how do I pay for it? And that's one of the things that I love about what you guys are doing with Stratus, is you're helping to facilitate the dream for a lot of people across the country. And I wanted to be able to do my part for that. And knowing that that's the number one kind of hurdle for stopping people from achieving their goals inside the aviation industry, we decided to start Aviation Start. Aviationstart.org is the largest, most comprehensive scholarship resource available for any aspiring aviation professional. We've got over $20 million worth of scholarships and grants that people can take advantage of, find what scholarship opportunity is perfect for them, and apply for it. Before Aviation Start, there wasn't really a cohesive industry-wide resource that you could go and see all of the different scholarships from across the country and figure out which ones might apply for you. So I hope that this helps, similar to what you guys are doing, of getting people an opportunity, whether they want to become a pilot, air traffic controller, mechanic, or get involved in airport operations or aviation business, an opportunity to get their start inside of this industry the right way.
Yeah, but your passion for aviation comes through shiningly. How do you get started on, I'm going to start something and I'm going to get resources for aspiring pilots to get scholarship programs?
So the biggest thing for me was I didn't have to actually reinvent the wheel. We just wanted to connect the dots for everybody. We don't host any of the scholarships at all at Aviation Start, but we connect people with the organizations that actually do. For example, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA, this year, just actually this month, they announced that they have awarded $2.2 million worth of scholarships to over 400 different students across the country. And it's not just for students. That's one other thing that I really want to make sure people are aware of. Adults also have the opportunity. The vast majority of the funds are designated for high school and college age students, but there are opportunities for a more mature audience if they want to get involved inside the aviation industry as well.
How do you think about scaling that as you continue to add more and more scholarships or connections into Aviation Start? Do you get more people involved, or what's the plan for that business in the next 3 to 5 years?
So the biggest thing is getting more resources available inside of it. As you are well aware, $20 million doesn't go, it goes far, but not as far as what we need it to do to have the impact that we need on the industry. When you look at some of the statistics in the forecast, we are expecting to have as high as 30,000 pilots in terms of shortage by as early as 2032. Boeing is forecasting that we need over 600,000 new pilots. But there's even more demand outside of the cockpit when you look at the fact that we need over 700,000 new mechanics. We need over 900,000 new people in cabin crew environments, and we need a lot on the airport operations side as well. So 20 million is not going to get the job done. We definitely need to go out there and get additional resources and also find some of the additional ones. One of the most difficult things is we spent over 6 months just researching the find 20 million that was out there. I know that we haven't covered the entire market, so there's more that we need to be able to add into our database. And also, I want to make sure we mention that it's completely free. So anybody that wants to have access to this information can go to aviationstart.org and get access to that database and then just apply for it and see what happens. But we definitely need to get some additional resources out there for people can actually take advantage of it, and a wide range of different career fields out there as well. So not just pilots, we're talking mechanics, air traffic controllers, airport operations, everything inside of the aviation industry that makes airplanes fly. So a long-winded answer to your question is getting more resources and then also getting the word out there. It's great to build $100 million database, but if nobody knows that it exists, it doesn't do that much good. So I'm spending a lot of time trying to get the word out. That's part of the reason for going back on tour this fall, is to hopefully let people know there's opportunities like Stratus Financial, there's opportunities like Aviation Start, and so many different programs for aviation workforce development out there to be able to attract a new generation into this industry.
Absolutely. And as you start thinking about the pieces you're going to need, right? Because you're going on tour, you're not working, I would imagine, in Aviation Start. What is it? Do you need more developers, more people? How do you think of that as a business and scaling it?
So one of the things that we're really focused on doing, because we provide a free resource, so we have to connect with industry partners that want to support aviation workforce development. So that's going out to both small and large aviation companies that want to be a part of making an impact, not only for students achieving their dreams, but selfishly for them to be able to have a workforce. When you look at most of the aircraft manufacturers, MRO facilities, engine manufacturers across this entire industry, they're extremely short on mechanics, for example. So they have to be able to attract people to be able to do it. If we can get more people attracted into this industry, then they have a better opportunity of being able to fulfill some of those roles. So what my goal is in terms of from a business standpoint with Aviation Start is to be able to drive out that message that we're hopefully helping build their aviation workforce and getting more people out there, and then gaining support from industry partners across the country.
Exciting work. And, we're passionate about it as well at Stratus. We want to make sure we can get pilots out there. We try to say that we're solving the pilot shortage one at a time.
Yeah, 100%. And, I wish I would have been able to apply for one of those loans when I was 14. Probably wouldn't have been approved, but still the opportunity to be able to find additional financing mechanisms to be able to get people inside of the aviation industry is really important. We see in 2024, we had about 63,000 new student pilot starts that the FAA created new licenses for. Which is about just shy of 10% less than what our all record high of 2023, which was around 69,000 new student pilot starts that happened. But unfortunately, even though we have that amount of people going into it, close to 80% of them are going to quit, and they're not going to actually matriculate into that full pilot development pipeline. So we're out of that. We're going to probably get around 12 to 13,000 people that actually do it. And that's not enough to fulfill the demand that we need for the next 20 years, especially as the amount of pilots end up retiring. The age 65 rule as of right now isn't going anywhere. So legally, we're going to have 45% of all commercial 121 pilots be required to retire by the age of 65. And that 45% happens in less than 14 years. So unless we actually do something, we're going to have a problem. So I think it's really important for us to attract people, get them passionate about aviation, get them involved in it. But even after we establish that passion, being able to facilitate that career path for them. And as you are well aware, it's, $100,000 to $120,000 on average for a pilot to go from zero flight time to become a 1,500-hour guy. And where do you be able to get that? Scholarships is not going to do the entire job. So we have to have financial solutions like what you guys are doing. And that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to be able to be a part of Aero Summit and talk to all the flight schools out there about you really need to be proactive about coming up with solutions to be able to make these things happen for their customers.
Absolutely. So as we start wrapping up, I'd like to ask a couple questions. What does scaling mean to you?
Scaling for me is actually building something of some sort of mass quantity. And for me, that's being able to actually have an impact on people achieving their dreams in aviation.
Love that. Do you have any books you recommend or anything because you have such an inspiring story on how you even got here, what is something you'd recommend any business owner really, starting from their business and try to start scaling it?
A mentor of mine told me to do this when I was in high school. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, I think is one of the best books out there. And then a second book by Tony Hsieh from Zappos, Delivering Happiness, The Wow Factor. I think those are two really good books because one talks about developing relationships and the other one is about making an impact on your customers. And if you can develop that impact and that experience, that wow experience for your customers, they're going to stay with you.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's kind of what we try to do in Stratus is how do you remove friction from the process as much as you can? I talk about it a lot in the company. Wonderful. Well, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, my biggest recommendation is go to aviationstart.org for more information on how you can obtain scholarships to make your dreams inside the aviation industry happen. And then if you are on social media, follow me at Jamail Larkins on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube.
Well, Jamail, real pleasure having you on the show. And this has been another episode of 4200% Build, Scale, Sale. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to 4200% Build, Scale, Sell. If you got value from today's episode, follow us on social media, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It helps more entrepreneurs find the show. Until next time, build smart, scale fast, and sell on your terms.